to the UIAAA Connection podcast. GoFan and VNN are proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection. Now a combined company, GoFan and VNN provide a seamless integration for digital ticketing and athletic websites. Direct your fans to one place for all your athletic events, communications, and tickets to home and away games. Thank you to GoFan and VNN for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, James Johnson, the National Director of High School Sales from College of Warroom. Welcome to the podcast, James.
Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate you for having me on.
Okay, let's have you begin by sharing with our audience here in Utah and actually across the world now, because the UIAAA, the NIAAA has gone international, where you grew up, where you went to college, your first job, etc.
Sure. So I grew up little farm town in Idaho, Rupert, Idaho, farm boy, like six kids, and a lot of sisters. I had a brother that showed up way late, like I was already 15 or 16 years old. But yeah, I grew up small town, riding horses, hauling hay, driving tractor. That's about all I did. Sports were basically unheard of at my house. Nobody played sports. And I was the first one to try and play some sports, and went from there. Like first job was milking cows and moving hand line. I did, which is really funny because the only athletic time I had, the only sports that I really had when I was really young, is I would just throw a baseball against an old wooden pallet. That was my thing. Like when I was in between hauling hay. I went to college right out of high school. I went to Rick's College. I graduated from Minico High School, went to Rick's College for a year, and then I went to Japan on an LDS mission, served there for 2 years in Osaka, Japan.
Okay.
Came back and went to Idaho State. A couple of buddies of mine from high school, we went to Idaho State. Lived there was three of us in a studio apartment. We created our own triple bunk bed to live in. So, we were very creative. And from there, I not long after my mission, I moved to St. George, got married, moved to St. George, and lived in St. George for about 4 years. And down there, I had a Japanese tour guiding business for a little while with an old companion of mine, and worked as a restaurant manager while I finished up at Utah Tech now. Finished up at Utah Tech. And then a little bit after that, when had a little baby girl, and then ended up moving back up to Salt Lake City, and I've been in Salt Lake City and the surrounding areas ever since. So,
yeah. Domo arigato for sharing those stories.
Yes, I love it. I had no idea when I was growing up that sticks would be such an important part of my life when I got to Japan. Like I thought, man, when I hit Japan, I know how to speak Japanese. I listen to sticks.
There you go. So let me ask you a couple of follow-ups. The first one, sure. Idaho State is in Pocatello.
Correct.
So is Pocatello, from your point of view, known as a college town or a railroad town?
So when I moved there, it was more of a railroad town, right? I think. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of railroad workers there because it runs right down through the old town Pocatello there. Mm-hmm. But as far as college goes, I think it's more of a commuter school than like a destination school. So you get a lot of the families in Blackfoot, some from Idaho Falls, Shelley, American Falls, that commute in and go to school. I always remember my classes always had people, and I was 21 at the time. I remember there were a lot of classmates that were 24, 25, 26. So it seemed like it was a little bit older.
Okay.
So,
and let me ask you another follow-up. Rupert, Idaho. So if I'm hearing you correctly, there are there's basically no Little League baseball or football or basketball in Rupert, Idaho, or at least there wasn't when you were there.
So there was Little League baseball, and I played Little League baseball until I was 10. I actually made the All-Star team as a shortstop, but then my dad was an old school farmer, cowboy, and I picked on my sister a little bit too much one summer, and so I had to quit and take ballroom dance lessons instead of play baseball. And so I just never, I was so embarrassed. I never got back into sports again until high school. And then in high school, I was the um, third string defensive end, and we only had two strings. So I looked more like Napoleon Dynamite than anything. That was me in high school. So I didn't. Yeah, there was Little League baseball. There was no football. Football didn't happen until you got to junior high school and you went straight into tackle. And then there was a little bit of basketball, but mostly it was just church stuff up there.
Okay.
So,
All right. Let's have you talk to our listeners a little bit about the leaders, the mentors, the people that made a great influence in your life.
So first and foremost, my dad. Like my dad, he's like, as much as we butted heads, as much as we, I didn't want to work on the farm and he wanted me to work on the farm. He wanted me to be a bull rider like he was and things like that. Like I learned hard work from him, and I learned to take care of my family and that kind of thing. Like really, like family and friends are how important they are to my dad, and taking care of people who are in need, and helping out. So I was always, I always look up to my dad, even though he's like 5'9". But he's great. And then I didn't have a lot of coaches, as we mentioned, because of no sports. I had a couple of teachers in high school that were great. I had a Mr. Miller that, man, it was fantastic. I actually ran into him in Rupert over the 4th, and it was good to see him. And he like helped me with academics. And then I have a couple of buddies that I've worked either with or for here in since I've moved to Utah. And one guy's name's Laren and one guy's name's Jeff. And man, I tell you, they've been instrumental in helping me grow, and in helping me learn how to work in the business side and manage the business side and the family side and everything all together, and enjoy life. So, and of course in golfing too.
Yes. Well, there you go.
Like they taught me how to golf too. But yeah, no, they've been great. And then like honestly, people that I look up to, my family, all my kids, all 4 of my kids, I look up to them. Like they're amazing people. So I really look up to them and what they can accomplish in life.
Perfect. James, what's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh man. So I don't know, like I very rarely have ever told anybody this, but I thought about this question when you were telling me to kind of be prepared for it. So when I was 28 years old, I'd just gotten divorced, moved up to Salt Lake City, and I didn't know how to ask for help from anybody. And so I just kept digging a hole for myself and ended up getting my car repossessed, and like that was like the low point. That was probably my biggest failure, not learning how to ask for help prior to that in life. And that really taught me that no matter what we're going through in life, no matter what it is, like if you need help, ask for it. And so that was what I learned from it. But that was kind of a low point and a big failure for me. I didn't think that would ever happen to me. I thought I was invincible.
Don't we all at that age?
Oh man, yeah. I still do sometimes, and then I wake up and my legs don't work and my arms don't work.
Oh, yeah.
My head hits the ground before I wake up. So
let me ask you somewhat of a follow-up.
sure.
What's one thing you wish you had known, I guess, when you began your career? So let's make it, what's one thing you wish you knew now that you didn't know then, back when you were 22?
When I was 22. One of the biggest things, like in my career and in life in general, is that I wish I had known back then that no, when people tell me no, it's not personal. Like it's just it just means no sometimes, right? And I always took no as personal so many times. And when you take no personal, it just kind of gets, it can get you down and you can miss out on great opportunities for friendship or follow up or whatever. But I wish I'd known back then that no was not personal all the time, right? So that was a big thing.
That's great insight. Let me ask you this, and I know some people may not know this about you, but I know you used to work for Arbiter, and I'm
I
not
did.
sure where you worked before that, but this question has to do with the job of a high school athletic director
Okay.
from your perspective. So since your time at Arbiter and now at College Warroom, you've been around a ton of ADs,
Sure.
a bunch of high schools, and I'm interested in your take on how the job of athletic director has changed since you first got involved with working with athletic directors in a high school.
Sure. They're busier. Holy cow. Like athletic directors have so much stuff on their plate that I think when I first started, and this is, 10 plus years ago working with athletic directors, it seemed like the athletic directors had a little more time to spend with the students, the athletes, and they built those relationships and whatnot, and they could help the kids. But it seems like there's so much stuff that I see now that are just, they're getting piled on with the budgeting, with monitoring all the teams. And there's more sports than ever now, right? And so, and more sports seems like being created every year. I'm assuming pickleball will be a sanctioned sport here before too long. But like they just get loaded with so many things, and it amazes me how they can handle it. But I think sometimes that's why I've seen across my areas, some states not as bad, but in some areas, man, athletic directors they get burnt out fast because they have a lot of things on their plate, and I don't think people realize just how much they do. But I've seen that they just seem to get busier and busier and busier.
Thank you for that
Oh,
insight. Let me ask you now. Of course, I know your son, and I've known your son since he was a freshman. But the question, we'll start with this question, and I'm sure it'll get to many other questions. But what's it like being the father of a high school player that was 51-1 in high school?
stressful. Um, it's a lot of fun. So when my son when he got to the point where he was going into high school, I told him I'm done coaching. I'm just gonna be a fan and a dad. And so that part alone was hard. And then he got lucky with his coaches, and they put him in right away, as you know, with your grandson. And it was stressful. At first, the stress was my kid's not big enough to be able to play with these kids. He's going to get killed, and that kind of thing. And then 51-1 is insane when you think about it. But as
Yeah.
as that streak went along, the pressure that he put on his shoulders to try and keep that streak alive, like would wear off. Like it would be me. So my stress was constantly, you got this. Don't worry, relax. It's a team thing, trying to talk him down and stuff like that. Um, and then it was also amazing, like just to be able to watch him, like, especially the last 2 years. It was just there was never a game that you went into that you just didn't. Okay, we're gonna win this one. It's not that big a deal. Here we go. But so I think it's like a roller coaster. It ran the gamut of emotions, like top to bottom. But it's it was cool. It's insane though, if you think about it, like what they went through.
Let me ask you a follow-up, and some people will think I'm being self-serving because everyone knows that my
No,
son-in-law is, well,
sure.
my
Oh yeah,
grandson played with Jay Light, obviously.
yeah.
My son-in-law is the coach at Corner Canyon. Everyone knows that. But I want you to detail, you and I had a conversation a few years ago about how your son was, in all likelihood, not going to play high school football. And so I'm asking this question,
Oh, sure.
not from it's my son-in-law, but the difference that a coach can make in a kid's life generally. That's where I'm coming from with this.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I remember that conversation. So when Jackson was getting ready to go into high school, his last year playing Little League football, we had heard that the coaching staff at Corner Canyon, they may be great people, and we didn't know a ton of them, but we had heard that it was more of a seniority based, and the older kids played and the younger kids stayed together, and he had a couple of his friends were going to quit football, so he wasn't sure where he stood. So he was actually thinking about just either playing baseball or since we live right there in Draper, and just going to Alta with his friends at Alta. And he was in wrestling. He was invited by Coach Ure to come to lift weights with Coach Care, with Eric, and had no idea who this guy was. And he immediately just saw him for who he was, treated him just like he was a senior, even though he was an eighth grader coming in as a freshman. And the culture and the vibe around everything, when it came time towards the end of his eighth grade year, Jackson he was like, I want to be with these coaches. Like these coaches, Casey Cetera, who's at Brighton now, was another one, and BJ, who's the offensive line coach. Like it was just a family atmosphere, and it wasn't all about it was funny because, as you know, Coach Care and Casey and those guys, they were going to win. In their minds, they were winning, right? We're winning. That's what we do. We win. But it wasn't all about that. It was about the kids too. And so the kids, like Jackson, felt like he was a part of a family within a month and couldn't bear to leave there. And so it was huge for him to have a coaching staff that did that. And as tough as it is for coaches to do that, man, we owe a lot to them for believing in Jackson. And I still, he's where he's at today because of his high school coaches. Like he got that head start. And that's how he picked his college too. He picked his college where it was going to be a family type atmosphere, very similar to high school. So, but yeah,
let me follow up now, because, and I know coaches make a big difference in all kids' life, but you and I both know when push comes to shove, when you're alone in the weight room, when you're down there with other kids, when it's the middle of January and you got to get up and lift at 6 a.m. and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Jackson's a hard worker, and I want you to talk now. You're in a kind of a unique situation because there's a possibility that after his junior year coming up at Oregon, that he'll leave and go to the NFL possibly. So now I want you to talk because he's like one of those 1% kids, not the everybody thinks they're going to be. He's actually made it at least that far. And so I want you to give possibly some advice for other dads that are listening out there and other coaches.
Sure.
On because the road may not be as rosy and as easy as everyone thinks it is, and you would know that.
Yeah, it's not rosy and it's not easy. What I've found through trial and error is, and the best advice I can give dads and parents out there is, it's okay to push your kids, but there's a fine line between pushing too far and not pushing enough. We had to let Jackson own it, but at the same time, we had to push him. And my thing that I made with Jackson was, I won't bug you about technique or if you did a play wrong or if you whatever, but I will get on you if I feel like you're not giving 100% effort. And then it's okay to and then as a parent, you need to let your kids know it's okay to push at a young age. So if your son's a freshman, your daughter's a freshman, and they're going in, it's okay for them to go in, and they don't have to bow down to the seniors or the juniors or whatever. They have just as much right as the seniors and the juniors to be there and to work as hard or outwork them. And a lot of times I think kids come home and they're frustrated because the coaches aren't seeing them, or they're frustrated because they're not getting the shot. But sometimes you have to put that back on the kid and say, okay, are you doing everything that you can for the coaches to see you and the coaches to use you? And so I've always told Jackson, I'm like, it's not your job to get on the field. It's your job to make it so the coaches can't keep you off the field. Like, that's your job. And it doesn't matter where you play. Like, a lot of times as a parent, we get set. Like, I was dead set Jackson was going to be a defensive lineman. Like, I was envisioning sacks, tackles, interceptions, like just that guy. And 2 weeks into his freshman year, they had him move over to offensive line, and he hated it. He didn't want to do it. And there was some battles between him and I on you got to be with the team, and battles with Coach Kerr on that. And so I think the more we teach our kids that, hey, it's okay to like play wherever they want you to, just get your foot in the door and play. That's huge, because kids get stuck. Like, I'm a receiver, I'm a quarterback, I'm a whatever, right? And it's okay to move around, just do whatever it takes to be on the team. And then it's going to take a lot of hard work from the parents. You can show your kids the right way by getting up at 5:30 and driving them to weight, or getting up at 5:30 and making them wake up, and then turn the accountability over to them. And it seems like it just grows. And as you know, Noah and Jackson, when they were freshmen, they learned that at a young age. So by the time they were juniors and seniors, it was unacceptable not to be at weights every single day. It was unacceptable not to go 100% at practice. It was unacceptable to lose in a game. Now, things happen, like you get sick, or you do lose a game, or whatever it is, right? And then you have to help your kids through that, because it's tough. When his first loss in college was his first loss in 5 years. And
yeah,
man, it was hard. It was phone calls and talking them through it. But it's a roller coaster, and if you're willing to do it, just find that fine line where you don't push too far, but you push enough, like, it'll be okay.
That's some great insight. Thank you so much for sharing that. Let's turn now to the company you work for, College
Okay.
Warroom.
Sure.
Let me give, obviously, an unsolicited plug. As the executive director of the UIAAA, College Warroom is one of our gold sponsors, and that means they give us money every year. I mean, let's just be right up front about that. They're a gold sponsor,
Sure.
but and with that money, we can do a bunch of things for other ADs and other high school students, etc. But I want to turn it over to you to let the listening public out there know about Warroom, what it can do for you, the types of programs you have.
Sure. So Warroom was actually, here in Utah, it would be kind of cool. It was actually built for BYU. So initially to help them manage their return missionary scholarships, and who was coming, who was going, when they were coming back, at about the time that they switched, how long missionaries were out. And it kind of grew and evolved from there. So we have the college side, which manages and takes care of the entire recruiting department, top to bottom, from travel to coaching to who the kids are at what high school, where they're ranked, what they do, all that kind of good stuff. On the high school side, it's one of those things that we feel like is a great tool for athletic directors, because it gives them oversight into every single one of their sports. So they can see what they have in inventory, what kids have what checked out. They know what coaches can put in what they need for the following year. So it helps streamline budgeting. It builds profiles so that as these kids are being recruited for volleyball or basketball or whatever, you can create a profile that it makes it really easy that you can send right out of the program. And it's just a little recruiting profile that you can send to coaches anywhere you want to, so their coaches can help these kids earn potential scholarships at the next level in whatever sport they like. It also has communication in it, so it makes it really easy to set up calendar events and send out reminders for people kids to remember about weights, and parents to get their notification that, hey, my kid has weights tomorrow, my kid has a meet on Friday, or whatever. And then it also allows for coaches to be able to email or one-way text their students with reminders for things. Send them game plans. They can attach a game plan. They can keep track of if they've got a new weightlifting program, they can send that out so that the kids are prepared. Or if they've got, notifications they want to send out. And some of our schools, in fact, I'll give a shout out to Lehigh. Lehigh football uses it to its fullest extent. They use it daily, use it to its fullest extent, but it's meant to really truly just organize. And then as an athletic director, again, like I said, you get to see everything you've got at that school, who your kids are, coaches, and you can in one place keep track of your school.
Let me follow up and ask you, go into a little bit more detail about the inventory possibility, because I've been obviously gone from Jordan now for 10 years, but I know before I left, I had started an inventory program that I could heat press barcodes onto the inside of the bottom of jerseys and game pants and shorts. And then with a laptop, as you talked about, you could just scan that stuff in. I assume this is something similar to that and probably even a little bit better than that. And I think that's a key point of your company that I want to stress here.
Yeah. So with inventory, our inventory, you can put in your entire inventory, how much, who it's assigned to, how much it's worth, how much you paid for each item, how much you have in total inventory. So not only do you get to keep track of who's got what jersey, like you said, or who's got what helmet, you now know how much you have in inventory. You now know how much you might need. You know what sizes you have. So when you have the kids, when they start off, they just take a little QR code and they answer 10 to 12 questions. So when you have incoming 8th graders, you run your incoming 8th grader camp or whatever it is, have them fill it out. And now when it comes time for spirit packs, or, you'll know exactly what size these kids are. And then you can gauge that compare it against what inventory you already have. And it helps with ordering to reduce costs and whatnot. But you can see every last piece. And then at the end of the year, I don't know how you checked it in at Jordan, but at the end of the year, if you counted all your helmets, you're like, well, we're 10 helmets short. You just click on a button and it goes, well, here's the 10 people that have the helmets. I can go directly to James. I can go directly to Hutch, and I know, give me that helmet back. You've got that helmet, right? Or as far as jerseys go, like if you have jerseys that are still missing, and I know that because my wife kept all the jerseys. In her mind, she didn't want anybody else to ever wear 74 at Corner Canyon, right?
Right.
So we ended up, Coach cared, hey, I need the jerseys. Are you going to have to pay for them? All right, we'll pay for them. We just want the jerseys, right? That kind of thing. But it made it easy for them it makes it easy for coaches to find out where their inventory is.
Well, I think that's important. And I can, like I say, people say that I'm old, which I am now, but I can remember in the late 90s and early 2000s that we didn't have the inventory system that I put there before I left.
Sure.
You're talking, you're not talking hundreds of dollars, you're talking thousands of dollars a year. And in some programs, it's thousands of dollars per program.
Yeah.
And so
one helmet's 500.
Oh, absolutely. And so you've got to have, I don't know what's in. I know when I had it at Jordan, we had these little they probably do QR codes now or something, but they had barcodes inside the helmet. You could scan it. And of course the kid would say, well, that's my helmet. I said, no, these helmets all got turned in. You turned in somebody else's helmet. You owe me a helmet. And it's amazing once it's 2 days before graduation, when all of a sudden the stuff starts coming back in because you have records. Because if you don't have records, that ends up killing you. So
well, and one other neat thing that we have is we have a list that you can create, that the coaches create, and it's needs versus wants. So throughout the year, they can go, okay, we know next year we're going to need 5 sets of football pads, but we would sure like to get a new set of uniforms. And so they can create this list as the year goes along, attach a dollar amount to it. And then when it comes time for budgeting, the athletic director can just go in and pull that list, drop it into a spreadsheet. And now they know that, hey, we really need $15,000 to keep our program running, but we would like to get $25,000. And then they put that in for their budget and see what they can get. And then they can divvy it out, but they can track. That helps when it comes time for budgeting each year too.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I would have interviews every spring towards the end with the coach. I'd ask for their inventory. Some inventories were complete right there. Some inventories were not. I'd ask for their budget. And of course, they were always high. And I'd say, yeah, this is, I need to know what you need and then what you want. And so that goes right along.
Yeah, it's got a button that it just check. You can set it as a need versus a want. So you can just categorize that as you need it.
What's the favorite part of your job, James?
Man, talking sports, but honestly, the people. Like, holy cow! Like, coaches and athletic directors are special people. Like, they have all of our kids under their care, right? And watching what they do to take care of, and when I say our kids, I mean all parents out there, right? Watching what they do to take care of our kids, so our kids can be on the field, on the court, playing the sport that they love, and continue to play it, do it safely, like the people. And then secondary to that, what's really cool is watching the kids leave these high schools in the state of Utah, no matter which high school they played for and which sport they played for, and succeeding at the next level. Like, that's really fun to watch. So, and know that I've know them, or I've met them, or I've watched their game. Like, that's really cool.
Thanks for sharing that. Let me finish up with a couple of questions.
Sure.
The first one being, from your perspective now as a businessman, you've got 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic director, and they need to follow James' 2 suggestions in order to be a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
Be organized. Start off with just be organized. Organization, I think, is key, especially with how much a new athletic director has on their plate. And then the second suggestion that I would have would probably be the way we've always done it, in quotation mark, doesn't have to be the right way. It may not be the right way to do it. And it's okay to make your school where you're at your school. And I think sometimes new athletic directors come in and they're so busy and everything that they're like, oh, well, we've always done it that way. That's fine. Coaches will tell them that. We'll just do it that way. But it's okay as an athletic director to make your school, because that's what makes you unique, right? So that would be my 2 pieces of advice for incoming ADs. Excellent.
And finally, what question should I have asked you, James, that I failed to ask you?
Geez, I don't know. I wouldn't have a clue what other questions to ask. I think you hit them all. Let's see. You could ask me what the greatest football team of all time in the state of Utah. No, we all know what I'm going to say. So,
of course.
And,
yes.
and I have to give you a hard time, because like, your grandson was on there, and what an amazing kid he is. So,
well, let me ask you this. The thought just came to me. And people look at successful teams and what makes them different from other successful teams.
Sure.
From my perspective, as an old guy, as a grandpa, those last 2 years at Corner, when I think they were 26-0, 28 or whatever, and no one came close to them. Yeah, they were great athletes. Yeah, they had great coaching. But I think the difference was they had student leadership, that your boy, Noah, 2 or 3 others on that team, Cole, Hagan. And I really thought, watching some of those games where it got to be close and they didn't score at the goal line, let's say against Sky Ridge.
Yeah.
I really thought that the student leadership, I don't think you can say enough about that, because coaches can do everything right. Their athletes can do everything right. But sometimes there's that intangible. And when you have a group of students that are family, like you talked about, they're together and they won't allow you not to succeed. I think that's important. So maybe talk about that for a moment to wrap this up.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's really important for coaches to teach their kids leadership and let their kids learn how to be leaders, because the student leadership, when you have the kids on the field, the field or the court, wherever they're playing, that's what separated that team. And I go back to there was a game against Lone Peak at Corner Canyon, and Corner was down by 14 points or 13 points or something. Yeah, 10 points.
Down
with
by
like
10 with 2 minutes left.
minutes left, and won the game. And it was interesting because I heard from a couple of the coaches that they were just like, okay, the kids were coming off the field going, don't worry, we're going to win. We're good. And it's that leadership that they were like, okay, they weren't allowing the other kids to get down. So I think student leadership on any team is a little bit overlooked sometimes. The coaches get a lot of credit, which they deserve. I mean, coaches are amazing, right? But I think if you can find the students that will accept that leadership responsibility and you teach them the right way, like, man, that can really be something for a team. That can really be the difference between a successful program and one that struggles.
Well, I couldn't have said it better than that myself. On that note, that wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guest today has been James Johnson, the National Director of High School Sales for College Warroom Incorporated. James, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
I appreciate it, Hutch. Sure. I love everything you guys do.
Thank you. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.